The husband and my best friend had a dragon and phoenix baby. I divorced calmly. He took his mistress back to her hometown to report the good news, and mother-in-law was stunned. Didn't she tell you? Story of sound. After I finished signing the last page of the divorce agreement and snapped the cap back onto the pen, my phone screen lit up with a WeChat photo sent by Cheng Yu. In the photo, he and Shu Man are each holding a baby swaddled in pink and blue, their heads close together as they smile at the camera, teeth showing but eyes hidden. The background is the VIP hospital ward's floor-to-ceiling window, the sunlight outside dazzling and harsh. Below the photo he added a line, dragon and phoenix bring prosperity, mother and child in peace. Wen Jing, we both have a new start now, you should look ahead too. I pressed the phone screen to mute and placed it face down on the cold wooden desk. On the desk lay a liquidation list of all my assets, from stocks and funds to property and shops, even a few niche oil paintings I collected years ago, every item listed clearly and transparently. I had spent an entire week sorting this out non-stop, not to divide, but to sever completely. Cheng Yu probably thought that by signing that agreement, the one he had his lawyers draft, stating he wouldn't mistreat me, I was admitting defeat, a pitiable fool kicked out of the game by him and his true love Shu Man. He thought this was a victory long planned by him and Shu Man, that an uptight businesswoman who only knows work and can't even bear a child deserves this fate. He was wrong. I picked up the list and walked toward the huge whiteboard wall in the living room. This wall used to be plastered with my financing roadmaps and product iteration plans for his fragile company. Now it is densely covered with deep blue and bright yellow sticky notes, arrows crisscrossing, numbers and code-like letters spreading like a spider's web, outlining a vast hidden flow of tens of billions of funds for a listed corporate empire. This is my new battlefield, or rather, this is the final liquidation tool I've prepared for myself. The phone buzzed again, this time a call. 2 Chinese idiom characters blinking on the screen. I stared at those 2 characters for 3 seconds, until the ring nearly stopped, then used a finger stained with a bit of marker ink to answer. I didn't speak. On the other end, Cheng Yu's voice came through, deliberately lowered but still full of smugness, like champagne just uncorked, bubbles fizzing up and about to spill over. Wen Jing, you've seen the photo, right? He paused, seeming to want to hear my reaction, but I remained silent, so he could only continue himself. A tone of boasting almost piercing the airwaves and slamming into my face. My child and I are twins born to slow, with the older brother weighing 5 Jin 6 Liang and the younger sister 5 Jin 2 Liang. Very healthy. Slow endured some hardship, but it was all worth it. You should also be glad for us. I held a bright red marker in my left hand and the media on the lower right of the whiteboard drew a large question mark through a dashed line marking the end of a cash flow to offshore companies abroad. Pushing the marker tip against the whiteboard with a sharp squeak, I exhaled a flat hum at the air, then asked, do you want me to prepare red envelopes according to the old home rules? Double. The line went suddenly quiet, and I could imagine Cheng Yu's expression at that moment. That hint of a smug smile likely froze on his face. He called me just to see me crack, to hear me question him, even to hope that I would hysterically curse him so that his pain could confirm the supposed righteousness of his betrayal and plunder, to add a bit more tragedy and victory to the so-called great love between him and Shu Man. But he didn't get anything he wanted. What he got was a greeting that tasted even less flavorful than plain water and a nearly ironic question about the red envelope. It took half a minute before he spoke again. The hint of deliberate gentleness in his voice was gone, replaced by the hypocritical pious pity he's used for 5 years, that same tone I've heard him use so many times. Wen Jing, don't do this, he sighed, as if he truly cared for me. I know you're hurting inside, forcing yourself to endure isn't worth it. We're at least husband and wife, and reaching this point today isn't entirely my fault, right? You're too strong-willed, always wanting to do things perfectly, wanting to control everything. The house was as cold as a ice cellar, and I had yet to warm it after 5 years. Slowly, he was different. He could give me a home, a real warm home. I softly repeated the word, my gaze shifting away from the cold numbers and arrows on the whiteboard to the window. Outside was the city's typical grey, hazy sky, with tall buildings, glass curtain walls reflecting a dim light. 5 years of marriage, and I lived in an apartment touted as a top-tier luxury residence, yet I hardly had time to look out the window. I had spent my best 5 years investing in idioms and in his then nearly dead rapid growth tech company. I studied financial risk management, and after graduating with a master's degree I joined a top accounting firm, climbing all the way to senior manager. When I met Cheng Yu, he was wrangling his startup, overwhelmed. It was I who used my professional knowledge to rebuild his financial model, untangle the chaotic accounts, stayed up writing countless polished business plans, and accompanied him to meet countless investors. We drank until my stomach hemorrhaged. Then I barely managed to secure a first decent angel investment. Later, the company faced several near bankruptcies, and I had to mobilize my network and savings, even hiding from him to mortgage a small house my parents left me, just to fill those deadly funding gaps. I originally thought we were comrades fighting side by side, partners who could share responsibilities, but I never expected that in his eyes I was nothing but a block of ice that couldn't be warmed. The sound from the idiom of the homeroom pulled me back to reality. He sounded upright and confident, with the cries and laughs of children, the hot smell of food, and the lights waiting for me to come home. Not every day coming home at midnight. What I faced was either overtime or a pile of cold data reports. When Jing, the divorce agreement I've already had lawyer Lee draft, I'll send it to you tomorrow. Rest assured, I Cheng Yu am not a thankless man. You've followed me for years, endured a lot. I won't undergive what you deserve, and if you don't need it, you won't either. I cut in, my voice still flat. The agreement I've long prepared. It's placed in the antique shrouded sandalwood safe in your study. The password is your birthday. I've signed it. The idiom fell silent again. This time the silence was longer. I could even hear the somewhat heavy breathing from the other side. He was probably digesting the information, frantically searching in his mind for when I had prepared the agreement and when I had figured out the password to his safe. His face must be written with astonishment now, and with the unwillingness and anger of a prey suddenly slipping away. When did you prepare it? He finally asked, his voice a bit dry. Dating back to the time you used overtime at the company as an excuse and stayed out all night. And Schumann's Moments of Friends happened to post a photo of a high-end hotel night view. I answered very straightforwardly, idiom, don't forget, I'm in risk assessment. My job is to predict and avert financial risks that could destroy everything from the smallest abnormal data. Marriage, to some extent, is also a collaboration that requires risk management. When the risk index exceeds what I can bear, stopping loss is the only rational choice. After finishing, I didn't wait for his reaction. I hung up the call directly, casually set the phone to silent, screen down, and threw it on the nearby sofa and whiteboard. Those complex and intertwined financial networks swayed slightly before my eyes, oddly overlapping with my 5-year marriage life. Those funds, discreetly misappropriated as market expansion expenses, correspond to the first Hermes bag he gave Schumann. Those repeatedly inflated travel reimbursements for researchers correspond to the tickets and hotel bills for their secret trip to the Maldives. Those shell companies that regularly wired consulting service fees, probably the monthly payments for Schumann's Central City apartment. Schumann, my former best friend, the sister who slept on the top bunk of my college dorm for 4 years. We squeezed into rush hour subways together, rented a shabby old place infested with cockroaches together, and at midnight we vented about bizarre bosses and scumbag ex-boyfriends at the late-night stalls. I joined a good company, and I didn't forget to pull her up, referring her to a good position. Even when Cheng Yu first met her, it was at a gathering I organized. I had laughed and patted Cheng Yu on the shoulder then, telling him that Man is my best sister, don't mess with her. Truly damn ironic. I once thought that when the truth of betrayal cut through the glamorous skin of life like a surgical knife, exposing the power within that had long since rotted and festered underneath, I would be distraught, hysterical, and feel that my entire life had collapsed. But no, when those pieces of evidence were laid out before me one by one, the first thing I felt was a professional, almost cold calm. My brain worked like a high-speed precision instrument, automatically calculating losses, assessing risks, and devising the optimal response. Sorrow and anger were compressed into a small, hard river, buried deep within the deepest part of my rationality. Divorce was a timely stop-loss, reclaiming everything I deserved, a liquidation of assets. As for Cheng Yu and Schumann, I stared at the bright red question mark on the whiteboard, pulled a huge smile at the corner of my mouth, saying that this kind of retribution sometimes doesn't require one to act personally, because just a week ago Ms. Zhonglan, who is nominally my mother-in-law, actually called me for the first time in 2 hours and 17 minutes in the phone. He sighed, worried, using that typical sparse, circuitous, yet suggestive tone of a small-town intellectual, telling me about a family matter that tormented him and kept him from sleeping. He wasn't worried about his capable son nor about me, his ineffective former daughter-in-law. He was worried about Shu Man, who in Cheng Yu's words was gentle, virtuous, understanding, and would soon give him a grandson. The next afternoon, Cheng Yu did come with his lawyer Li Yao. He wore a brand new Armani suit, his hair neatly combed, and his face carried a look of determination tempered with a touch of vigilance. Shu Man didn't come, she had just given birth, was still in confinement, and the sense of victory mattered more to her for the moment. In my apartment, everything that belonged to Cheng Yu, his golf clubs, limited edition audio equipment, down to his anime figurines and worn-out pajamas, had been sorted, packed, and neatly arranged in the entryway. A few large cardboard boxes were stacked together, like small tombs, burying all the trivial yet real times of our 5-year marriage. Cheng Yu entered and, seeing the setup, frowned. The composed exterior he had managed to maintain was starting to crack. "Wenjing, what are you doing?" His tone wasn't pleasant. His eyes scanned the boxes, then fixed on me with an evaluative glare, itching to drive me out. "There's no need to make this so awkward." I sat on the living room sofa, several documents spread out in front of me, not answering him, only tilting my chin slightly to signal him to sit opposite. Cheng Yu and Lawyer Li exchanged a glance. Lawyer Li pushed his gold-rimmed glasses up the bridge of his nose, sat down first, adopting a businesslike demeanor. I pushed a document toward Cheng Yu. "This is a property division agreement, premarital properties to each their own, no dispute there. The postmarital joint property mainly includes 35% equity of Yofei Technology, our 3 houses, 2 cars, and some financial investments to be divided. I've listed everything. Please take a look." Cheng Yu didn't move. Lawyer Li reached out and took it over, quickly skimming. After only a few pages, his expression changed. The rate at which he adjusted his glasses accelerated, and when he looked up at me, his eyes were filled with disbelief and professional sharpness. When spoke, her voice deliberately kept steady, but that icy doubt still leaked through. "This agreement might have problems, General Manager. Cheng's stake in Flying Pace Technologies is a business asset, and the postnuptial appreciation should, according to relevant laws and the supplementary terms of your prenuptial agreement, be considered as Lawyer Li's." I interrupted him, grabbed another thicker, neatly bound document from the side, and gently placed it before him. "These are all of Flying Pace Technologies' important accounts from its founding to now, copies of bank transaction details, and the investment agreements and payment vouchers from 5 critical financing rounds. In 2 of those rounds, when the company's cash flow had collapsed and it was teetering on bankruptcy, I invested risk capital in my personal name through the trust channels of my mother's family. According to the 3rd supplementary clause of our prenuptial agreement, this portion of equity and all its appreciation shall belong to me personally." I paused, watching Lawyer Li's eyes widen in an instant and Cheng Yu's face suddenly turn ugly. I continued in a calm tone. "Additionally, I acquired 15% of Flying Pace Technologies as part of our marital property after marriage. I'm willing to transfer 50% of it to Cheng Yu at the current market valuation. After all, the child is just born, expenses are high." Lawyer Li's hands trembled slightly as he flipped through that thick file frantically, his face growing paler with every turn of the page. He probably never dreamed that his ex-wife, who for nearly 5 years had kept a low profile and played the role of the successful man's woman behind him, would hold such detailed and deadly crucial evidence in his hands. This evidence not only clearly defines the ownership of the equity but also, like a scalpel, subtly pries open those not-so-clean funds operations of his client. Cheng Yu's face had gone from ugly to ashen. He snatched the property agreement from Lawyer Li with a sudden move, his eyes fixed on me as if for the first time truly recognizing who I am. "Wenjing," her voice squeezed through her teeth, filled with the anger of being deceived and a trace of imperceptible fear. "You're calculating me," you started. "Calculating me long ago, aren't you? Just stating the facts here, dividing the property." I picked up the already cold plain water in front of me and took a sip. The icy water slid down my throat, making me feel a bit more lucid. "Cheng Yu, did you forget? The first version of Flying Pace Technologies' financially impressive forecast model that impressed investors. I stayed up 3 consecutive nights for you, constantly refilling coffee to help you make it. When you received the first $10 million investment, that due diligence report that left partners without fault, I invoked connections at my former employer, had my master come out of retirement to help you with it, and at least helped you avoid one contractual trap. You forgot. Enough." Cheng Yu suddenly erupted, slapped the coffee table, and even my glass jumped. The veins on his temples stood out as he pointed at me, furious and bellowing. What use is all this? Yes, you helped me, but what have you done for this family? What else can you do? Besides work reports, how many times has my mother urged to have a grandson in these 5 years? And you always busy. I want a wife, a mother who can give me children, not a cold partner, not a partner who doesn't even want to return home. This is probably the dialogue he and Schumann had long agreed on, the words they used to justify their own behavior during countless nights when they snuck around behind my back, comforting each other, encouraging each other. If spoken aloud at this moment it would seem to place him on the moral high ground, allowing him to credibly accuse me of dereliction. Looking at his flushing face from excitement, and at that pitiful set of excuses, I suddenly feel like laughing. In fact, I did laugh, but the laugh was shallow, not reaching my eyes at all. Child, I put down the water glass, leaning slightly forward, my gaze calmly meeting his eyes that burned with anger and guilt. Chungyu, we've been formally trying to conceive for 2 years, visited the 3 best hospitals, done a full set of examinations, and every doctor concluded that both of us are physically healthy, with no medical obstacles to conception, so why can't we get pregnant? Chengyu's gaze flicked, he avoided my looked elsewhere, his Adam's apple rolling once. Isn't it because you're under too much pressure, thinking about work all day, about your risk control endocrine regime? Couldn't that be the problem? It's your own problem. He forcibly shifted the blame back, but his voice had lost its old confidence. Right, the corner of my mouth curled a little more, but my voice cooled. Then why is Schumann pregnant with you after one time together, and so lucky to have a dragon and phoenix-born pair? His work pressure isn't small either. As far as I know, she diets to stay slim. Their daily routine is more chaotic than mine. So how did all the medical common sense fall apart with him? This sentence strikes like a venomous needle, precisely puncturing Cheng Yu's sham bravado. He paused, the color draining from his face. A flash of panic briefly flashing in his eyes, but quickly covered by a forced calm. Don't be so sneering here. Slowly, that's just good constitution. Not like you who stay up late every night and have an irregular life. He strained his neck to argue, but the words were pale and powerless even to him. So that's how it is. I nodded as if accepting his absurd explanation and stopped pursuing the topic. I stood up and walked to the entryway, pulling over a silver suitcase that had stood there for a long time. If the agreement is no problem, I'll sign. I pressed the retractable handle on the suitcase. It gave a crisp click. After signing, you can take these suitcases with you. By the way, I didn't touch your most prized Patek Philippe Nautilus moon phase at the bottom layer of your study safe, nor the $5 dollars in cash hidden among the cigars and the loft. Raising 2 children isn't cheap. Consider this a little bit of kindness from your ex-wife to the kids. Cheng Yu's face alternated between red and white, his chest heaving violently. The eyes toward me seemed ready to spit fire, yet mixed with the shame of being completely seen through and powerless to counterattack. Lawyer Lee whispered a few words to him from the side, probably reminding him that at this point there's no benefit in entangling further. Signing quickly and taking what he can is the wisest move. Cheng Yu clenched his teeth, almost snatching the pen from Lawyer Lee, and roughly signed his name on the property division agreement. The sound of the pen tip scratching the paper was sharp and heavy. Holding the signed agreement, Cheng Yu looked like a defeated rooster. The vigor he had when he entered just now had vanished, leaving only a barely sustained, battered dignity. He glared at me fiercely, and the venom in his eyes almost seemed to coagulate into something tangible. When Jing, don't be complacent, he gritted his teeth, and every word seemed ground from between his teeth. You'll regret it. Just hold on to your money and your job for the rest of your life. You'll grow old alone, and I will gradually have a son, a daughter. I will be the winner of life. You wait and see. I ignored his howl like a barking dog and simply watched him and Lawyer Lee, and the 2 assistants who came in afterward, who were busy shoving those cartons out. The foyer quickly emptied. With a bang, the heavy solid wooden door was slammed shut, cutting off all noise from outside and the nauseating scent, and the world finally quieted down. I walked to the huge sliding glass window overlooking the city beneath, the traffic like a glowing river slowly coursing on the overpass, the neon lights in the distance starting to come on one by one, outlining a cold yet glamorous skyline. The phrase "life winner" is far too shallow and too ridiculous as a definition of winners. You know nothing about the coming storm. I walked back to the sofa, picked up my phone, the screen still on the chat interface with Cheng Yu sending the family photo. I swiped my finger and found the number for Zhonglan in my contacts. Since my relationship with Cheng Yu soured, this number had rarely been dialed. The last call was that long 2 hours and 17 minutes from the week before. I opened the message, edited a line. Mom, Cheng Yu and Shu Man had a pair of dragon and phoenix twins. He is happy, said in a few days he will take the children back to the hometown for the banquet. To report joy to you and Dad. My finger paused on the send key, then I gently pressed to send. The notification sound of successful sending faintly rang. Without hesitation, I immediately opened Cheng Yu and Shu Man's WeChat profiles and added both to blacklist, then moved on to the phone contacts. After finishing all of that, I tossed the phone back onto the sofa and stood again in front of that huge whiteboard wall. The vivid red question mark on the whiteboard looked particularly glaring among the dense network. I picked up a blue marker and slowly wrote 2 characters beside that question mark. Beginning the game. The curtain had only just risen. Cheng Yu's moves were faster than I had imagined. Only 3 days after the divorce was finalized, I saw his new post on Moments, a series of 9 pictures with the caption, "From now on, 1 + 1 = 4, grateful for everything, the future is promising." In the photos, Shu Man wore comfortable home clothes, her face bare, hair loosely tied, holding 2 babies wrapped in soft swaddling, her eyes soft enough to seem to weep. Cheng Yu wrapped his arms around her and the children from behind, his chin gently resting on Shu Man's head, his face showing undeniable satisfaction and pride. The background is their new home's living room, decorated in a warm color palette I had never seen before, piled high with baby items. Sunlight spilled across the carpet, making everything look incredibly cozy. The comment section had turned into a large flattery scene. "Mr. Cheng is amazing, his career and family both flourishing, the true winner in life. Sister-in-law is stunning, the baby is so adorable. Congratulations to Mr. Cheng on the birth of a son and a daughter. Lin Nu, a dragon and phoenix. Mr. Cheng's blessing is unstoppable. Congratulations to Mr. Cheng on tripling in 3 years, with a dragon and phoenix omen. Blessings are overflowing." Even a few mutual friends who are acquainted with us left insincere blessings below. The words reveal obvious awkwardness and cautiousness. Cheng Yuza was in high spirits, almost replying to every comment with a tone of deliberately modest bragging, like an emperor who has just conquered the world and is eager to display his spoils to the whole world. He certainly has reason to boast. After 5 years with me I couldn't bear a child, but with Shu Man, not only did he have a child, it was a dragon and phoenix twin, a symbol of good luck for a man who is inherently traditional, who regards carrying on the family line and face as more important than life itself. And for the family behind him who also values these things, this is undoubtedly the highest glory, a medal that could wash away all original sins. I calmly skimmed through those photos and comments, logged out of social media, opened my computer, and logged into an encrypted email that required 2-factor authentication. A new email lay in the inbox, sent by a string of random-looking letters. I knew who it was. Opening the email, the content was extremely simple, with no text at all. Only a download link to an encrypted compressed file and a separate text document containing an address. I downloaded the archive, entered the password to extract it, and inside were a dozen or so high-definition photos. In the photos, a man in a dark hoodie, wearing a mask and a baseball cap, hurried through the doors of the same private reproductive medicine center at different times. Although he wrapped himself up completely, I could still recognize his walking posture and the small, inconspicuous processing scar on the lobe of his left ear. Cheng Yu's cousin, 2 years younger than him, held a nominal position at Cheng Yu's company, earning a decent salary, but just idling away his days, with his greatest hobbies being hanging out at bars and gambling on bets. The Reproductive Medicine Center had a name that sounded high-end, New Birth International Reproductive Health Center. It was precisely when grandmother Zhonglan was on the phone, stammering, unable to finish her sentence, mentioning that Shu Man wasn't feeling well, that the center accompanied by her to check. As for the address, it was in an old neighborhood near the city's edge, near a large logistics park. Cheng Feng rented a 1-bedroom there, and reportedly went there occasionally for some relaxation. I closed the photo window, opened the text file's address, and typed the address into the electronic map, which showed that it was a neighborhood built more than 20 years ago, noisy, with low rent, about a 40-minute drive from the new birth center. I downloaded and saved all the information to a locally encrypted hard drive, then replied to that email with just 2 words. Continue. After sending the reply, I sent the email again. I got up and went to the kitchen to brew myself a cup of hot tea. The fragrance of Biluo tune slowly spread in the air. I carried the teacup to the balcony, the night breeze with a chill brushing against my face, and the city lights downstairs still dazzling. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. After dealing with these things, I began handling the transfer of Flytekker's equity that I had split from Chengyu. Chengyu's lawyer Li Yarrow was quite efficient in professional matters. The next afternoon, a substantial sum was deposited into my designated account. Watching the arrival notification pop up on the mobile banking app, I felt completely unmoved. This money was what I deserved. I exchanged 5 years of youth, countless efforts, and even part of my parents' inheritance for it. They are back now, and soon they will have new, more important uses. In the following days, my life became as regular as a precisely programmed machine. I got up at 7, exercised for an hour, started work promptly at 9, handling several independent consulting projects I took over, and met with my legal team and private financial advisor in the afternoon. I conducted a thorough-hand restructuring of all the assets I had split from Chengyu, and placed them all under an offshore family trust for management. I had to ensure these funds were completely severed from my past. During this period, several friends called one after another, their tones careful and evasive, asking about the divorce. I gave a uniform response: personality clashes, different ideals, a peaceful breakup, a clean and amicable separation. Only one friend, also Schumann's college classmate, hesitated for a long time on the phone and finally, unable to bear it, lowered his voice and said, "Jingjing, you're really going to let it go like this? Schumann has gone too far. When we were in school he was like that, seemingly gentle but actually very willful and clever. If he set his sights on something, whether it belonged to someone else or not, he would find a way to get it. I never thought he'd even take a person away now." I cut him off. There was no emotion in my voice. For the separation from Chengyu, it was a problem between us. But the friend sighed. "Chengyu is now telling everyone that you couldn't have children, your personality is too strong and strange, and life was unbearable, so he was forced to divorce. Schumann is even more ruthless, playing the victim in their little circle, saying that you quit voluntarily and thus completed their great love. He has always felt guilty about it." Listening to this, I could hardly hold my lunch down. The two of them are shameless to the extreme. I lightly raise an eyebrow. What they say fits. Now they've packaged themselves as the leading man and woman who endured hardships in a tragedy and finally achieved true love. I heard that next weekend Chengyu will host a grand 100-day banquet at his hometown, inviting all the influential people in town to grandly introduce Schumann and the child to everyone and solidify his image as a successful family and career man. Is that right? I picked up the now cold tea and took a sip, the corner of my mouth lifting into a faint, almost unfelt smile. The scene must have been lively. After hanging up the phone, I walked to my desk, opened the calendar, and next weekend's dates were already circled in red by me long ago. The hometown of Idioms is a small town in the south, nestled by mountains and water with simple folk customs, yet it places great emphasis on tradition and face. There, rumors spread faster than the internet. Spittle could drown a person, and any family's little misfortune would spread across the whole town within half a day, becoming decades of chatter during tea and meals. The bigger you build your stage and the more spectators you invite, the harder and uglier the fall would be. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. It rang 56 times before someone answered. On the other end came a girl with a strong hometown accent, tired but still warm. "Hello. Who is this?" "Little aunt, it's me, Xiaojing." I spoke softly in our hometown dialect. "Oh, it's Xiaojing." Her voice immediately rose a few degrees, filled with surprise. "How did I think of calling, little aunt? How have you been lately? Busy with work? Have you eaten?" "I'm doing fine, little aunt. How are you and uncle's health?" Okay, we're all good. It's just uncle's old stomach trouble keeps flaring up." After chatting a few more sentences of family news with little aunt, I got to the point. "Auntie, are you free next weekend? I want to go back to the hometown to handle some things." "Are you free next weekend? If you're free, you'll come back." Auntie nodded and agreed. But then she also looked worried and asked, "Xiaojing, are you and Chengyu having a quarrel? A few days ago I heard Aunt Liu in town say she saw Chengyu's mother." Teacher Zhong wore a worried, sighing expression, asking him why he wouldn't say. "My little aunt works at the town government. Although not a high-ranking official, she has broad connections, stays well informed, and is honest and kind-hearted. The softest sand in her eyes is when there's something to handle. I won't go into details now. I'll tell you more when I return. By the way, little aunt, about my return, please don't tell anyone else yet, especially not the Cheng family. Aunt on the other end of the phone paused for 2 seconds as if realizing something, and her voice became a bit sterner. Fine, Aunt knows, don't worry, whenever you get to the station you'll go to meet Aunt. There's no need to pick you up, I'll drive back and contact you when I arrive, okay? And be careful on the road. After hanging up with Aunt, I felt a little more relieved inside. The day before the 100-day banquet for the child of the Chongqing Chengdu hometown, I drove back to this town that felt both familiar and unfamiliar on my own. The town is half surrounded by a clear river. The blue stone pavement has been worn smooth by time. Old-style white-walled, black-tiled houses are laid out in a pleasing arrangement, and the air is thick with damp mist and the fresh scent of plants. Time here seems to flow extraordinarily slowly. I did not notify anyone. Parked the car in the underground parking lot of a newly opened chain hotel on the east side of the town, and checked in using documents not in my own name that I had prepared long ago. The room is on the 8th floor. When I open the window, I can see not far away the new 3-story building of the Cheng family. In front of the building, a festive red canopy has been set up in the open space, with strings of red balloons and lanterns hanging. A long red banner hangs down from the 3rd-floor balcony, with large golden characters that read, "Warm congratulations on Chengfu Jiarui Jiashuang's 100-day celebration." The Cheng family is considered a prestigious family in town. Cheng Yu's father is the retired principal of the town's middle school, esteemed and respected, the most outstanding figure of this generation in the big city. Running a company or being a boss is what many parents point to as other people's children when educating their own. This 100-day banquet is not only a celebration of the birth of 2 children but also a coming together of a family, a grand declaration to the whole town of the family's prosperity and the continuity of successors. I drew the curtains, opened my portable laptop and connected to a secured network. On a final check, I examined the gift I had brought, a plain black USB drive containing the detailed investigation results from Private Detective Laro K. Over the past half-month, Cheng Feng has clear surveillance screenshots of 7 visits in the past 6 months to the New Source International Reproductive Health Center, with times, attire, and vehicle information labeled clearly. A partial summary of the last year's conversations between Xu Man and Cheng Feng. While the content is not detailed, the frequent call times happen to align with the key periods before and after Xu Man's pregnancy. A background investigation report on a New Source Reproductive Center. The center appears compliant on the surface, but secretly offers some special, extremely expensive customized services. The report mentions that they have a hidden resource library that can meet client-specific requirements for donor characteristics, and Riding the Wind is one of the active donors registered in this library, codename K07. Finally, there is a professional medical analysis briefing, based on a small number of photos and videos of Xu Man's pregnancy before and after, mainly captured unintentionally when showcasing mutual affection. Combining his lifestyle and past medical history, I gleaned from his old social media and casual chats a brief analysis of the very low probability of natural conception of a fraternal twin, and the feasibility of achieving this result through specific medical means. All clues were like scattered beads, connected by this invisible thread. Xu Man did not become naturally pregnant at all. She used medical means through institutions like New Source to transplant someone else's fertilized egg. The eggs were almost certainly her own or possibly bought. While the sperm was very likely from Cheng Feng, he orchestrated and staged the pregnancy and childbirth himself, fooling the idioms and fooling everyone. He found Cheng Feng perhaps because he thought an acquaintance is relatively controllable, and also hoped that the child would have a bit of blood relation to the Cheng family so that appearance wouldn't reveal too many flaws in the future. Third, the cost might be lower. He was truly meticulous, but unfortunately he missed 2 points. First, he didn't anticipate that a grandma who longed for a grandson to the point of near madness, and who valued family face above all else, would erupt in earth-shattering anger and resolve once she learned the truth. Second, he completely didn't put me when Jing in his sight. She probably thought I was just a failure blinded by love and marriage who would quietly fade away once abandoned, but he forgot, or rather never understood, that a top-risk auditor's greatest strength is to sniff out the omen of a storm beneath the tranquil surface, and to prepare the sturdiest ship and the deadliest weapons. I never fight unprepared. At dinner time, I changed into a plain, inconspicuous dark grey sports suit, put on a baseball cap and tucked my long hair into the hat. I walked out of the hotel alone, blending into the bustling evening market of the town. I entered the town's most popular old restaurant, found an unobtrusive corner seat and ordered a bowl of their signature beef noodles. The restaurant was bustling with conversation, and almost every table was loudly discussing tomorrow's 100-day banquet to celebrate a wedding. Have you heard? Principal Cheng's son, who's a big boss in the big city, is hosting a 100-day banquet for his twins tomorrow, a boy and a girl. What a pair, really stirring up the ancestral grave with green smoke, isn't it? That kid Cheng Yu has been clever since he was young. And now his business prospering. His wife is also extremely fertile, so he has children and a daughter all at once, truly enviable to the point of death. Sigh. His previous wife also worked in the big city, and I heard she was quite formidable too. What use is being impressive? I heard from Cheng Yu's mother that the woman is a workaholic, gone from home every day, and after marriage for many years there hasn't been a single movement in her belly. A daughter-in-law like this, if the family takes her, it's done for. Now this one is so good, an old classmate who knows people well, good looks, easy to raise children. Yes, and now I've heard she's quite virtuous, takes care of the old man properly. That's true happiness. I lowered my head and ate the noodles in front of me slowly. The remarks that were either envious, or scornful, or certain, every word drifted into my ears one by one. It seems that Cheng Yu and Shu Man had long since taken the reins of public opinion through the mouths of Cheng family elders, and now nearly everyone in the town probably believes that I am a failed woman who cannot bear children, reasonably abandoned by the Cheng family, while Shu Man is the savior who revived the Cheng family's lineage and brought double blessings. Very well, the higher you stand, the worse the fall will be when the time comes. The backlash of public opinion is often more deadly than any direct attack. After finishing the noodles, I scanned the code to pay, lowered my hat and left the restaurant. Silently, back in the hotel room, night had fallen deeply. The Cheng family's small building outside the window was still brightly lit, and faintly I could hear the hubbub and music over there, presumably for the final preparations for tomorrow's banquet. I can imagine that at this moment the Cheng family must be immersed in a near euphoric anticipation and busyness. Cheng Yu and Shu Man are probably fantasizing about how tomorrow they will receive the grandest blessing in front of all relatives and friends, solidifying a new chapter of their happy and perfect life. They do not realize that the meticulously built glamorous stage will become a storm eye that devours them completely in less than 12 hours. I sat down at the computer, bundled the most crucial report photos and medical analyses from the USB drive and sent them to my aunt's private email using an untraceable anonymous address. The body of the email contained only a simple sentence: a person who cares about their family and fertility. Please make sure Mrs. Zhonglan sees this before tomorrow's banquet begins. These aunts have spent their lives working in the town's disciplinary committee, the most upright and resolute people, who cannot tolerate even a grain of sand in their eyes. Moreover, he and his mother-in-law Zhonglan used to be good friends in youth. Though they drifted apart due to trifles later, the sentiment remained. It would be most appropriate for him to pass on this gift. Given Zhonglan's character, she would absolutely not be moved to remain indifferent upon seeing these things. That stubborn belief that family honor and bloodline purity are more important than life itself would push her to make the most extreme reckless reaction. And this is exactly the kind of person I need to light the fuse at a critical moment. After sending the email to confirm delivery, I turned off the computer and the lights in the room. The room was plunged into darkness, with only the distant Cheng family building's lights seeping through a narrow crack in the curtains, casting a blurry, wavering shadow on the ceiling. I lay on the bed, closed my eyes, and in my ears I could still hear the town's night quiet mixed with frog chorus and distant TV sounds. Tomorrow will be a very lively day, and the next day's weather looks unusually good. The sun poured down unreservedly, lighting up the open space in front of the Cheng family's small building so brightly that the red canopy, the golden banner, and the colorful balloons all appeared vividly dazzling. The gate to the Cheng family was already crowded with people, from retired officials to business owners, from school teachers to distant and close relatives of the Cheng family, all arriving one after another. Cheng Yu wore a sharp navy blue suit, his hair slicked back with gel, standing at the door to greet guests with a look on his face that was both restrained and unabashedly elated. His father, a retired principal, had also changed into a brand new Zhongshan suit and stood with him, greeting the guests. Although his face still looked pale from recent health issues, his spirit seemed good. and his eyes and brows carried both relief and anxiety. I did not go to the scene. I stayed in the hotel on the 8th floor, opened the curtains just a crack, and observed the happenings there with a high-powered telescope. At the same time, my phone was connected to a live video feed from my aunt's side. My aunt had found an excuse to go to Cheng's house early to help, and the phone was placed in a spot that was inconspicuous but offered a great view. In the video, people came and went. The noise was boiling. Xu Man, holding the child, was surrounded by a group of women and seated on the central Ming-style chair in the main hall, covered with red silk. Today she obviously dressed with great care, wearing a modest makeup, a bright red modified cheongsam with her hair piled into a graceful bun adorned with a pearl hairpin. She held 2 babies in her arms, dressed in the same red jacket with gold embroidery. They were indeed adorable. He lowered his head slightly, listening to the surrounding women chatting and complimenting, a smile at the corners of his mouth, and the sense of pride in his brows and eyes almost overflowing, as the entire Cheng family compound was filled with a nearly bloated jubilation. My gaze mainly fell on another person, Madame Qian Zhonglan. She was also dressed formally today in a royal blue velvet suit with a scarf tied around her neck and a meticulously curled hairstyle. She moved among the guests wearing a urbane smile, greeting this person, exchanging pleasantries with that one, looking no different from any grandmother who hosts a feast for grandchildren. But I knew it was different. Through the binoculars, I could clearly see the stiffness of his smile, the unnatural twitch of the muscles at the corners of his mouth, and the cold gloom in the depths of his eyes whenever his gaze wandered blankly. His movements were more hurried than usual, and his tea-pouring hands even trembled slightly, almost spilling the tea. My aunt's WeChat message appeared just in time. She had looked at the things, knocked on our door before dawn, eyes red as if she hadn't slept all night. I handed him the printed documents. He sat in our living room, page by page for an hour, not saying a word, his fingers crushing the edges of the paper. When he left, his whole body seemed to be in motion. I helped him. He shook me off and only said one sentence, "I know," and I replied with a single character. The ceremony footage showed the auspicious time approaching. The MC, holding a microphone, stepped onto a temporarily erected small stage to test the sound, then began to warm up with that festive yet exaggerated tone. It was nothing more than praising the family's prosperity, the thriving household, praised Cheng Yu, young and capable, praised Xu Man, virtuous and kind, praised the 2 children as heavenly blessings. The audience responded with bursts of laughter and applause. After the warm-up, the MC announced loudly, "Now, with the warmest applause, let us invite today's little birthday star and our happy parents to the stage." The music shifted to a softer, more joyful tune. Cheng Yi, standing upright, walked onto the stage first to carefully take the baby boy from Xu Man's arms, holding him in his embrace, then took Xu Man's other hand. Xu Man held the baby girl, a shy yet happy smile on her face, leaning against Cheng Yu. A family of 4 slowly walked to the center of the stage, the applause and cheers louder still, with whistles mixed in. Cheng Yu held his son, scanning the sea of guests below, and the smile on his face finally blossomed, a smile of unhidden pride and satisfaction. He cleared his throat, spoke into the microphone with a loud, buoyant voice that could not suppress his excitement, thanking all the elders and friends who, amidst their busy schedules, could attend his son Cheng Jiarui and daughter Cheng Jiaxuan's 100-day banquet. I, Cheng Yu, stand here today feeling the weight on my shoulders, not pressure but happiness and responsibility. I finally have something to rely on. The audience erupted again into applause and cheers like thunder. Some uncles and aunts, who had grown up reading the same set phrases, even wiped away tears in excitement. After the applause for those phrases subsided, Cheng Yu continued his performance. He turned his head and looked affectionately at Xu Man beside him, his voice softening a bit as he spoke. "Here, what I want to thank most is my wife Xu Man." He paused, seemingly gathering an even richer emotion. "It was she who gave me a complete family, who taught me what attachment and responsibility are. With her gentleness and strength, she has walked with me through wind and rain, and given me the greatest surprise of my life. These 2 adorables." Slowly and hard-won, Xu Man lowered her head in due course. Her eyes slightly reddened, a look of moved yet shy. A woman in the audience let out a sigh of envy. Cheng Yu was satisfied, withdrew his gaze and looked again toward the head table. "I also want to thank my parents, thank them for years of nurturing, for their constant support and encouragement, especially my mother, who for this family, for me and Man Man, has given so much. Her words were evidently carefully prepared, thorough and heartfelt, painting her as a grateful, responsible man who has achieved both family and career success. Many in the audience were touched, particularly the elders who grew up watching Chengyu, nodding their heads in approval. Chengyu spoke with increasing emotion, more fluent and confident, as if already seeing a brighter, more brilliant future for himself at this moment. In the video screen, Zhonglan, who had sat silently at the main table, head bowed, seemingly listening intently, suddenly stood up without warning. His movements were abrupt, the chair legs scraping the floor producing a harsh creak. The sound was not loud, but in the midst of Chengyu's heartfelt speech it seemed particularly abrupt. Nearby, a few tables of guests instinctively looked over, and the host was momentarily stunned. His professional instinct urged him to smooth things over, and a smile spread across his face as he took a step toward Zhonglan, opening his mouth as if to say that Grandma was eager to take the stage to say a few words. But before he could speak, Zhonglan shot him a freezing, razor-sharp look that seemed to seal his fate. The host's smile stiffened instantly and he awkwardly shut his mouth, instinctively stepping back half a pace. Chengyu's speech was interrupted as well. He halted his words, looking somewhat dazed at his mother, his brows furrowed, his eyes revealing confusion and a hint of irritation at being interrupted. "Mom," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying a question and a barely perceptible warning undertone. "Why did you come up here? Are you too excited? You can sit downstairs first, I'll finish speaking right away." Zhong Lanjun paid him no mind at all. She walked slowly but steadily straight onto the stage. Her high heels clacked on the improvised stage boards, making a dull thudding sound that seemed to strike at the heart with every beat. He stepped up to Chengyu. His gaze paused first on Chengyu's face for a moment. That look was complex and indescribable, pain, anger, and despair all rolled into one. In the end, it all melted into a cold, decisive resolve. Then his gaze shifted downward to Chengyu's arms, to the baby boy in Chengyu's embrace, wearing a red jacket with big, bright, curious eyes wide open. Chengyu instinctively held the child a bit tighter, a wary expression flashing across his face. "Mom, are you going to hold on to Jiorui? He's a bit shy around strangers." Just a little while longer. Zhong Lanyi remained silent, only reaching out her hand, and with a somewhat rough motion she directly took the infant from Chengyu's arms. Caught off guard, Chengyu watched as the child was already taken by his mother. His arm loosened a moment and his face suddenly showed a hint of strain. "Mom, be careful." Zhonglan seemed not to hear him. He held the child in both arms, lifting him to eye level, his eyes not blinking as he stared at the baby's face. His gaze was like a scanner, meticulously inspecting from the baby's forehead, eyebrows, eyes, nose, and mouth inch by inch, extremely careful and very slow. Time seemed to stretch. Everyone on and off the stage held their breath, watching this bizarre scene with puzzled expressions. The festive music had somehow stopped, leaving only the harsh sound of wind blowing over the canvas and the faint barking from afar. Schumann's smile from the moment she held her daughter had long vanished, replaced by a growing fear and unease. His lips moved, wanting to say something but no sound came out. Instinctively he tightened his hold on the baby girl and leaned his body back slightly. Chengyu's face changed as well, from annoyance at the interruption to confusion, then to a subtle unease. He looked at his mother, then at Schumann, and finally his gaze fell on the mother holding the scrutinizing baby boy. In his mind, something seemed to begin buzzing. Zhonglan watched for a full half a minute. After half a minute he slowly, extremely slowly turned his head, his gaze like two ice-cold knives, stabbing straight at Schumann, whose pallor was as white as paper. His lips began to tremble, not with fear, but with an extreme tremor of anger. He spoke not loudly, even somewhat hoarse, but because of the extreme suppression and coldness, every word fell like ice droplets crashing into the silent air, crystal clear and reaching everyone in the audience. Schumann, his whole name, full name, no warmth at all. Schumann quivered violently. The baby in her arms seemed frightened and cried out with a sharp, piercing wail that echoed in the dead courtyard. Zhonglan seemed to ignore the child's cry altogether. His eyes fixed on Schumann, one word at a time, asking in a tone that could freeze blood, "Tell me which child this is." He suddenly raised the still innocent baby boy in his arms toward Schumann, his voice rising sharply, tearing with a fierce cry. "Whose child is this? What nonsense are you talking about?" It wasn't Schumann who first lost control, but Chengyu. The color drained from his face, the hand holding the microphone trembled, his voice urgent and fierce. as if he wanted to shove this sentence back with a roar, but Zhonglan didn't even look at him. He still fixated on Shu Man's eyes, the eyes that usually carried a scholar's restraint, now burning like two flames, filled with fury and shame after being deceived. "I'm not lying," he suddenly laughed, a laugh that was sharp and cold, making one's spine tingle. The next second, he abruptly shoved the baby back into Cheng Yu's arms, then reached into his black carry bag and pulled out a brown paper file bag, slamming it down on the table with a thud. The thud wasn't particularly loud, but it felt as if even the wind had stopped in the entire courtyard. "You don't go around bragging about having twins every day, acting like you're so capable and blessed, do you?" Zhonglan pointed at the file bag, voice trembling, yet every word was clear. "An idiom, didn't he tell you?" He took a step forward, nearly slamming each word into his face. "These two kids are not yours at all." Boom. Everyone in the audience was stunned. Someone sucked in a cold breath. Some had their teacups clatter to the ground in a shower of pieces. A few relatives in the front row stood up abruptly, chair legs scraping harshly against the concrete. "What did you say?" Cheng Yu's eyes were reddened, the hand holding the child instinctively tightened as if fearing someone would snatch the child away. "Mom, are you crazy? What day is it today? If you say this here, I'll think I'm crazy." Zhonglan's voice suddenly rose. "If I were really crazy, I wouldn't have endured until today in front of so many people asking you." He raised his hand to point at Shu Man, his hand trembling violently, even his fingertips shaking. "Tell him, what exactly did you say you were doing in the whose seeds are the two inside your belly?" Shu Man looked pale as a sheet. His arm holding the baby was stiff and it took him a long time to force out a sentence. "Mom, you must have misunderstood. The child is newly born. Don't scare everyone." "Shut up," Zhonglan snapped, a sharp rebuke that cut him off. Even the MC beside him stood dumbfounded, the microphone not in hand, nor laid down. Zhonglan stooped and pulled a stack of printed papers from a file bag. The movement was too hurried, the papers rustled and scattered, a few fluttering to the ground. The nearest people looked down and their expressions changed at once. The topmost page, blank paper with black characters, lists the New Life Global Reproductive Health Center. Beneath it are several blurred yet recognizable keywords: artificial insemination with a blue whale, promotion, informed consent form, donor number K07, method of conception, embryo transfer. Cheng Yu stared blankly at the paper, his pupils slowly dilating, his throat as if blocked by something, unable to speak for a long while. Zhonglan, however, did not stop. "Half a month ago you said to go to the hospital for a checkup. I wasn't relieved I went with you." He stared at Shu Man, his voice hoarse and harsh. "Do you think I'm old? My eyes are failing, and I can't understand anything. But I'm not so old that I can't even recognize my own nephew's name." When this sentence landed, the audience below suddenly became more chaotic. "What does nephew mean? It can't be." Could it be that among the crowd a man in a flowery shirt standing behind everyone, originally ready to watch the fun, his face suddenly turned pale? Instinctively stepping back only to be blocked by someone behind him, almost stumbled. That person wasn't anyone else, it was Cheng Feng. Zhonglan turned her head abruptly, her gaze like a knife stabbed into him. "Shifeng, what are you avoiding? Isn't your donor number K07 from New Life? You went there 7 times in the past 6 months, every time claiming to go to the city to look at moments. The friend you looked at is your cousin's wife's belly, right?" The whole venue fell completely silent. Cheng Feng's leg went soft, nearly collapsing to kneel and peruse the words. "I'd know," he stammered, beads of cold sweat running down his face. "You'd know." Zhonglan lunged forward and slapped him hard. Smack! This slap was extraordinarily heavy. Half of Cheng Feng's face instantly swelled, the corner of his mouth split. "You said no. Then explain. Why is there your ID's last digits on the New Life registration form? Why did old Zhao at the nurse's station recognize you at a glance? Why does a photo show you entering and leaving that hospital 7 times?" As he spoke, it seemed he could no longer hold on. His voice finally cracked with a sob. Zhonglan lived most of her life, taught and valued propriety and rules the most. I always thought fate had opened its eyes, finally letting my son have a child. And what then?" He suddenly turned around, fixed his gaze on Shu Man, tears suddenly streaming down, but not from sadness, from anger, from hatred. Who wouldn't know where this stray child came from, pretending to be our Cheng family's dragon and phoenix twins, wanting me to marry, to raise someone else's child, to uphold someone else's reputation, to bear the jokes of a lifetime for someone else? Shu Man, how dare you?" Shu Man finally couldn't hold on any longer. The baby girl in her arms cried loudly, but he acted as if he hadn't heard. and the last trace of redness on his face drained away. He opened his mouth, wanting to explain, wanting to deny it, but when he met Zhonglan's eyes, which looked almost to swallow him, and glanced at Cheng Yu nearby, whose face was pale and clearly wavering, he began to tremble. "No, it wasn't like this, Ayu, listen to me." He staggered a step toward Cheng Yu, but Cheng Yu recoiled as if burned. The step back was swift and fierce. Shu Man froze in place, the panic in her eyes bursting out all at once. Cheng Yu stared at him hard, the expression on his face cracking bit by bit, shock, humiliation, anger, disbelief, until they all twisted into a knot. "You lied to me." His voice was harsh and hoarse. "Shu Man, tell me, is this really true?" "I didn't lie to you," Shu Man finally cried out, hugging the baby and lunging toward him. "Ayu, don't listen to him, it's just the adults who stirred things up. He doesn't like me, he never has." "Then what about these?" Zhonglan nearly slammed a stack of papers into her face. Several documents spilled onto the stage, one of them landing on top, white page with black characters clearly visible. Besides the new LifeSource project sheet, there were a few surveillance screenshots. Feng Cheng walked into the reproductive center's door, wearing a hat and mask, time, date, parking records, all of them, without missing a single one. Someone in the audience finally couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "This is too disgusting, deceiving a marriage and deceiving a child. The Cheng family has made a huge fool of themselves this time. Isn't it a twin? After all this, they're not even the father of the child." The surrounding voices pierced Cheng Yu's ears like needles, and he began to tremble. The hand holding the baby grew paler and more rigid, the pressure increasing until the child cried out from the discomfort. The two cries, one high and one low, intertwined and completely turned this once joyous 100th day banquet into a colossal joke. When the scene spiraled completely out of control, my phone buzzed. It was my younger aunt sending a real-time video. The camera shook badly, but it still clearly captured the chaos on stage. Then a line of text she sent followed. "It can be now." I watched the screen as I slowly stood up outside. The sun was blazing, illuminating the entire Cheng family yard like a pot boiling over. Good. The hottest moment has come for me to go on stage. I closed the laptop, held the black file bag that contained another gift, grabbed my car keys, and headed downstairs. 10 minutes later, I walked through the chaotic crowd at the gate in high heels. Someone recognized me, their faces filled with shock, voices stumbling. More people turned around in an instant. All eyes landed on me, curiosity, embarrassment, schadenfreude, and a dawning realization. After all, before today, the ex-wife who was said to be too strong to bear, to be publicly ousted by her husband's family with dignity, was now making her appearance, glaringly at the most humiliating and tearing moment. The idiom on the stage saw me too. He looked as if something had pinned him down. The anger from the humiliation in his eyes had not yet faded, and a deeper panic suddenly surged, because he was very clear that I never did meaningless things since I came. I would never be here to just watch the excitement. I walked onto the stage step by step, my heel hitting the wooden floor with a crisp, steady rhythm, neither fast nor slow. Tap, tap, tap. Each step seemed to strike the final death knell for today's farce. I stood still under everyone's gaze, my eyes first scanning Zhonglan, then giving a slight nod. Aunt Zhong looked back at Cheng Yu. He was holding a child in his arms, his face ashen, as if he had just crawled out of a tomb. I smiled softly, my tone even polite. Clearly arriving just in time. After speaking, I slowly placed the black folder on the table. Zhong Auntie's file can only prove that the child isn't Cheng Yu's biological son. But what about mine? I looked up and met Cheng Yu's trembling gaze directly. "It proves that you, this life winner, not only love being a father, but are about to receive a bankruptcy notice as well." I opened the file bag, pulled out the top sheet, pressed it gently on the desk. A breeze blew in, the edges of the pages curled, and there was a soft rustling sound. Everyone fixed their eyes on those papers. I wasn't in a hurry to explain, only looked at the idioms, my voice steady. "Haven't you always thought that after I left and sped off, the company would still turn around? Then today I'll lay it all out in front of everyone and settle the accounts for you." Cheng Yu's expression suddenly changed, the fingers gripping the child tightened. "When Jing, don't cause trouble here. This is a family matter and not your business." I cut in softly, my gaze calmly sweeping over the child in his arms, then returning to his face. "Weren't you just on the stage a moment ago, eager for the whole town to know how successful and perfect you are? If you like it loud, then let it be loud to the end." I pulled out the second set of materials and handed them to Uncle Zhong. The oldest accountant in town closest to the stage. You've spent your life fighting battles. Please help everyone read this. Uncle Jong paused, instinctively glanced at Cheng Yu, then at me, and finally accepted it. He adjusted his reading glasses, lowered his head, and the frown on his brow immediately deepened. These are the bank statements of Feichi Technology for the past 3 months. I nodded in agreement. There are also credit certificates, pledge agreements, and the latest round of financing covenants. To put it simply, I turned to look at the already terrifyingly quiet crowd below the stage. Cheng Yu had mortgaged basically everything the company could mortgage: the houses, cars, equity, equipment, and even the next 3 years' accounts receivable had been transferred out, and the 50 million big deal he used to prop up the facade. I raised my hand and tapped the documents on the table. Another contract. There was fake. Boom, the audience exploded again. Fake? How could that be? Wasn't there talk of a new project signed not long ago? I even heard Principal Chen say his son's company was going public. Cheng Yu's eyes flashed with obvious panic for a moment, and he immediately raised his voice. You're talking nonsense. Wen Jing, you stop spreading rumors here. That's company trade secret. You an outsider. What right do you have? What right? I smiled. Was it based on the capital verification report from the company's registration that I had someone prepare? Based on that so-called cooperative method, the person disappeared 3 months ago, and the office address now houses a stall selling spicy hot pot. On the day you signed the contract, even the official seal was a temporary stamp and the serial number was missing 1 digit. I paused, gazing at his suddenly pale face, and continued, Cheng Yu, you really think I didn't know anything during the time I left the company? You took that fake contract to the bank for a second credit line, and used the credit money to fill the previous deficit, then used future revenue to fill the current hole, tearing from one wall to another, stubbornly propping Feichi up to today. What a pity. I slowly raised my hand and checked the time. Just before I came in, I had already sent all related materials to you. Now the largest lending bank investor and the tax inspection department. At the latest in half an hour, Feichi's all corporate accounts will be frozen. That bit of dignity you maintained by borrowing to repay ends today. It felt as if a hammer had struck Cheng Yu head on, and the whole person staggered. Are you crazy? He muttered. In the next second his eyes reddened suddenly. He roared at me, Wen Jing, are you going to ruin me? I looked at him with a calm, almost cold gaze, the idiom flying past to today. It's not I ruined you. You yourself hollowed yourself out. You used the company's money to support a lover, bought a house, a car, and kept a child. You changed his parents' house. You paid off his younger brother's gambling debts. This wasn't me forcing you, right? You turned the performance bonuses meant for employees into market expansion funds, funneling them into accounts tied to Shu Man, one by one. This wasn't me forcing you, right? And that precious cousin Cheng Feng of yours. My gaze shifted, pinpointing the man who was trying to slip away at the back of the crowd. Cheng Feng. How many holes did you help him fill? Do you want me to recite them all for everyone? Cheng Feng's leg buckled, nearly sending him to the ground. Zhonglan suddenly turned her head, eyes blazing like fire. Cheng Feng, you did move company money after all. Cheng Feng's lips trembled, unable to say a single word. At that moment, Cheng Yu's pocket phone suddenly trembled wildly. His hand shook, nearly dropping the child. In his arms, the caller ID clearly showed 3 words, Secretary Wang. He almost instinctively answered. Before he could speak, a panicked, sobbing voice came through from the other end, very loud, so loud that even someone outside the microphone could hear clearly. Mr. Cheng is in trouble. The people from the bank have arrived, the tax people have arrived. They say we're suspected of contract forgery and misappropriation of funds, and there's more. Secretary Wang was gasping for breath, as if she had been running all the way to answer the phone. What else? Cheng Yu almost roared. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Then, as if exhausting all her strength, she shouted out one sentence. The other part of the technology patents that Mr. Cheng once held at exactly 12:00 noon today has been fully repossessed by the original owners. Our core product's underlying algorithm can't be used anymore. The end of Fake Eye is here. It's really the end. Patter sound. Cheng Yu's phone slipped from his hand and fell to the ground. The screen shattered, but the call hadn't ended yet. Secretary Wang's broken sobs echoed intermittently. Investors want to pull out, and employees are starting to riot. President Cheng, please come back soon. If you don't return, the company will be shut down. The whole yard fell into a terrifying silence in an instant. The once lively 100-day banquet, Now even the cries of the children sounded especially grating. Everyone looked at Chengyu, the man who had just stood on the stage. With a smug grin, declaring himself the winner of life, was now holding a child who was not his own, standing among a pile of red lanterns and red silk, his face deathly pale, lips trembling, as if a foot had slipped, dropping from the clouds straight into the mud, and Schumann was even more panicked. He held the baby girl, his voice trembling. Are you, don't listen to him, he must be doing this on purpose, say something, tell them all this is fake. I let out a gentle laugh, then drew the last item from the bottom of the folder, the stock transfer confirmation. In stark black and white it stated that the 15% stake in Feichi Technology under my name had been transferred yesterday. The transferee was not Chengyu, nor any investment institution he was familiar with, but a foreign capital Manda fund. I slowly held the document up so everyone could clearly see the seal and signatures. I forgot to tell you, Chengyu, that the portion of the equity I had allocated to you was sold yesterday. The price wasn't high, only 150 million, but the condition for the other party to take over was that after the merger and acquisition settlement, they would immediately initiate Feichi Technology's asset liquidation process. I paused, the corners of my mouth slightly raised, meaning that from today Feichi would no longer bear the surname Chengyu. Completely frozen like a piece of wood struck by lightning, standing there, even breathing seemed to stop. He stared at the shareholding confirmation letter, his eyes widening bit by bit, as if unable to believe it, yet also as if finally understanding something. You were prepared all along. His voice was so light it floated, calmly admitting to me, ever since you and Schumann secretly went to a hotel with me in the past, I began preparing. Since you wanted to kick me out of the company for her, I've been waiting for today. Since you decided to use me as a stepping stone, treating Fei Kai as the wedding gift for your new life, I looked at him straight in the eyes. Everything was already doomed. No one in the audience knew who cursed first with serves you right, and it seemed to light a fuse, deceiving in marriage, deceiving in child-rearing, and hollowing out a company. What a bastard. Principal Cheng's dignity in his whole life has been dragged through the mud by you. I'm annoyed. I just praised him for his ability. After all this fuss, he's just a hollow shell. You brought back a wildling to impersonate the Cheng family lineage, and you still want to fool the whole town with a banquet. Who can stomach eating this meal now? It's absolutely gross. Zhong Lan stood at the center of the stage, swaying, almost losing her footing. She raised a hand to steady herself on the table edge, her gaze shifting from Chengyu to Schumann and the two children, and finally she seemed to have lost all hope. Her voice trembled, idiom after idiom. You really have dragged our old Chen family's face into the mud. Chengyu opened his mouth as if to explain, as if to say something, but he couldn't utter a single word because at this moment he had nothing left to explain. The child wasn't his, the lover deceived him, the company was nearly no longer his, and his greatest irony was that on the day he was most proud, everyone publicly saw how stupid, greedy, and ridiculous he was. I looked at him and suddenly felt somewhat bored. This reckoning had reached a sufficing point, so I tucked away that document and turned to leave the stage. At that moment, Chengyu seemed to finally be pulling himself together from the massive collapse. He grabbed the child and moved forward with a hoarse, sharp voice. Discreetly, I stood still, not turning around, and the back fell silent for 2 seconds. Then with a clearly trembling voice, he asked word by word, "Have you never loved me?" I finally turned around and saw a man's wolf's features twisted into a pale grey face. No longer the young man who once in the rented room said to me, "Trust me, I'll give you a future." I looked at him and suddenly smiled. "I did love you, that's why I walked with you from nothing to today." But alas, my gaze grew colder inch by inch. The sincerity I gave you, you ruined yourself, and now this outcome is what you deserve. After saying this, I no longer lingered, stepping off the stage in high heels, one step at a time. Behind me were completely exploded cries, curses and commotions, and the child's sharp cries, and I didn't even turn my head again because from today onward none of this is my business. The Chinese idiom brother Cheng sounded from his father's palm as a wake-up call, so harsh and loud, carrying the old man's half a lifetime of dignity and face trampled by his son. It toppled him to the side, and the infant in his arms nearly slipped from his grasp. Damn fool. Principal Cheng's entire body trembled in anger, his chest heaving violently, his glasses crooked. "Do you still have the face to stand here? You've dragged the entire Cheng family's ancestral dignity through the mud. Those who were just now holding up wine cups to offer congratulations in the crowd now avoided us as if the plague. Some people retreated outward. Some pretended to be busy, and some simply took their families and left. The originally noisy 100-day feast had already dispersed most of the guests in the blink of an eye, yet the pavilion hung with red ribbons was still there, balloons were still floating. The double happiness characters were affixed in bright red, but the atmosphere inside the intestines had already turned completely sour. Schumann cried with her daughter in her arms, her hair in disarray, shouting over and over, "Are you believe me?" But who would listen to him now? Zhonglan rushed over, lifted the child in his arms, and grabbed him away, his eyes red as if they had been quenched in blood. "Don't touch my granddaughter," Schumann screamed, reaching out to snatch back. Zhonglan stepped back 2 steps, his voice trembled. "You still dare call you this heartless thing? You took a wild kid from who knows where to fool my family into holding a banquet for you, fool my son into buying you a house and a car. Do you think our family are fools?" "No, it's not a wild kid," Schumann cried as if insane, tears and snot smeared all over her face. "Auntie, please talk, tell Auntie these 2 children are yours." Cheng Yu stood in place, his face pallid, lips trembling. He didn't not want to say it, he simply couldn't voice it, because the barrage of calls just now had shattered all his luck. The child might not be his, the company really couldn't be saved, and most terrifying was that he suddenly realized he had nothing in his hands now, no dignity, no company, no me. Even the proud new life she had spoken of had become a complete hoax at that moment. His phone rang again, it was Secretary Wang again. He wanted to cling to the last lifeline and shakily pressed to answer CEO Cheng's call. The voice on the other end was no longer crying, it was a resigned, defeated tone. The court people arrived, bringing an asset preservation order to seal the company, and from the statistics just compiled by HR and legal, today alone 27 mid to senior executives had resigned. Voluntarily, the board also issued a notice, immediately ousting you from the positions of executive director and general manager. You can't stay anyway. Cheng Yu stood there as if his soul had been drained. A few seconds later, his phone slipped from his palm and crashed to the ground with a bang, the screen shattering to complete blackness. I didn't read further. As I left the Cheng family courtyard, the sunlight was just right, the wind not too strong, the willows by the riverbank of the town swaying gently as if nothing had happened. Aunt chased after me and tucked a thermos into my hand, eyes red. "You child," she sighed, "after such humiliation, how come not a single word of complaint?" I unscrewed the cap. Inside was hot soy milk, a faint sweetness spreading. "It's not too late to talk now." Aunt looked at me, wanting to say something but stopping, finally only patting my hand and saying to go back and live your life well, not to look back. I smiled and nodded. Yes, not going back. That evening I was driving back to the city when the sunset cloud spread layer after layer across the horizon, as if water had slowly burned old debts into ash, and there were far more people in the city waiting for a saying to come true. Early the next morning, financial news exploded. Fake Eye Technology was formally entering judicial liquidation for suspected contract fraud and misappropriation of assets. The founder of the well-known startup, Cheng Yu, was ousted by the board and his personal assets were frozen. The farce of the Chengyu 100 Days banquet was exposed. The child's lineage became a mystery, and hot searches soared one after another. The media, like sharks smelling blood, pounced completely. The Cheng family, who had hoped to suppress the affair, wouldn't even dare leave the house now, and Schumann finally revealed his true colors. On the 3rd night, I received a message from Laroque containing only a photo. In the photo, Schumann was dressed in black, wearing a mask and a hat, pulling 2 large suitcases, hurrying away from the underground garage of his downtown apartment. He wasn't alone. Beside him was Cheng Feng. The two moved quickly, their car trunk stuffed with cash, jewelry, and several file bags. There was also a short note beneath. 13 million yuan had been deposited last night into overseas accounts under Cheng Feng's name, Schumann's associated accounts. After I finished reading, I put the phone on the table and laughed. Perfect. Dogs biting dogs is the best part. Another day passed and Cheng Yu finally called me. This time it wasn't from a landline number nor from a secretary's phone. I don't know what method he used, but he borrowed someone else's phone. When I answered, the line was incredibly quiet, only heavy, ragged breathing. After more than 10 seconds, he spoke with a hoarse voice, gentle and calm. "Yes, I replied indifferently. "Shu Man ran away." Those 4 words spoken from his mouth carried an indescribable absurdity, as if he were finally admitting that the true love he cherished in his hands was essentially just a fraud using him as a stepping stone. I stood at the full-length window watching the traffic below, my tone very calm. "Oh, he took everything he could take." His voice trembled. "The property deeds, bank cards, the safe keys, and also the education fund I had saved for the child." The phone Shu phone and he ran with also went off, and no one at home could reach Wenjing. He paused for a long time as if he could no longer bear it. "Had you known all along?" I smiled softly. "Know what? That he would run, or that the child isn't yours." The call suddenly hung up. And when he tried to speak, Cheng Yu felt as if something clogged his throat. His voice was hoarse and broken. "You've known for a long time. You knew all along. You know that I know I didn't deny it. But why should I remind you? The idiom, you chose it yourself. You kicked me out and let him take my place. Haven't you always thought she was gentle and simple, that she understood you, that she would give you a complete home? Well, now he has torn down your home. Doesn't that just show that your judgment isn't good?" Wenjing, he suddenly roared, but the tail of his sentence rose sharply. "Do you have to speak like this? Then how am I supposed to say it?" My voice cooled. "Should I comfort you, pity you, or praise you?" "Deserved it." He fell silent, only the stifled breathing audible. After a long while he whispered hoarsely, "I regret it, Wenjing, I really regret it. The company is gone, the child wasn't mine, even he deceived me. I have nothing left now. Will you come back? Let's start over. As long as you're willing, I'll give you everything I have left. I'll listen to you about anything. Wenjing, I beg you." I closed my eyes and suddenly felt very bored, really very bored. This is when a man treats you as a stepping stone to glory. But when he falls, he wants you as a lifeline. He's not regretting betraying me. He's just regretting losing someone who would always back him up. I listened to him finish, then spoke. "You've got it wrong about the idiom. I am not your fallback, not before, and certainly not now." He breathed evenly when Jing and I interrupted him. My voice was very soft, but there was no room for negotiation. "Don't call me again. Whatever happens to you now is your own karma and has nothing to do with me." After speaking, I hung up directly and casually added this number to the blacklist. The night outside pressed down bit by bit. The city's neon lights came on one after another. I poured myself half a glass of red wine, sat back on the sofa, and my phone buzzed again. This time it was my aunt's voice note, carrying a trace of satisfied relief in its tone. Cheng Yu came back to his hometown this afternoon, knelt in the yard and begged his parents for help, but his father slammed the door shut in anger and didn't give him a single drop of water to drink. Zhonglan was still inside the doorway scolding him, saying that once you start a family you should pretend you never had this son. Now everyone in town avoids him. It's an embarrassment to the core. After I heard this, I deleted the voice note, then opened my calendar. Next Monday I'll go to meet a partner from a new fund, to discuss leading a medical technology project. Next month I'll fly to Hong Kong for an Manda cocktail party. As for what comes after, my life has a long way to go, long enough for me to start over, long enough for me to live prettier than I ever have before. And Cheng Yu will only be a long-abandoned, obsolete project on my resume, not even a failed case. I swayed the wine in my cup. The dark red liquid gently rippled under the light like a belated celebration. I could finally live for myself for once. I slept very well that night, dreaming neither of the past nor of anyone, only the wind brushing softly past the window as if turning over an old page for me. That night has finally ended.